Hi guys, this is Nat from snowdroponline.com, and just a quick video talking about An African City Season 2. Well, scratch the quick bit, I don't know if it's going to be quick or not, but I've just finished watching An African City Season 2 and I just had to talk to someone about this. If you don't know, An African City is a web series that focuses on African women who were either born in Africa or born abroad, but primarily have spent a lot of time in the West, decide to return home. So these are returnees, and in this case they're returning to Ghana. Most of the ladies are from Ghana, but I believe we have Sade is Nigerian with some Ghanaian heritage. Sade is one of the characters, and I believe Ngozi is, I'm not sure what country she is from, but she's not Ghanaian, but they're all in Accra in Ghana.
5 women, after living abroad, are back home.
And I remember sitting there, 8'6", in the States, knowing so clearly that miles and miles away that there was this home that I truly belonged to. Tonight, I'm going to show the world that natural is synonymous with glamorous.
One of the reasons why I was so drawn to this series, probably like many of you guys watching this, is, you know, I identify with that Afro-Politan woman, as it were, being African, but having spent, you know, a time abroad, just that fusion of the two influences, and carving out this identity that, you know, that is still African, but still accepting of the West, as it were. So there's so many things to unpack from this season, and I'm not going to try and sort of like do a review in the pure sense and go through every single thing, but there's just some key things that I want to talk about. I mean, first of all, the fashion is just absolutely fabulous. I you know, if you haven't seen it, please watch the series. I'd also ask you to maybe look at the credits just to see who's done the styling. I'm going to do that as well, because the styling is absolutely fabulous. One part of the series that stood out to me is there's a scene, I believe it's in the final episode, where they go to an art gallery and they're all there looking at the art, and Ngozi's on the phone trying to finalize her wedding arrangements, and the ladies just look spectacular, and it's just chic, but it's truly African. They're not it's just beautiful. I think the fashion is beautiful, and they've done a great job this season in particular. I've been so impressed. Another thing, I guess, under the fashion ban, as it were, is the issue of hair. This issue was addressed in such a beautiful way this season. It had sort of been touched upon last season, but in this season, what I really wanted to talk about was there's a scene where Nanaya, as you know, is one of the main characters. Her father is a minister of energy, and there's a scene that her mum has always made comments about her hair. So Nanaya has natural hair. The mum's always made comments about the hair, you know, but Nanaya has ignored it, you know, as you would, because it's a very sensitive subject, and you need the right time to kind of broach it if you feel you need to educate people, as it were. And there's a real powerful scene where Nanaya's mum, they're sitting around a kitchen table, and her mum says to her, "What are you gonna do with your hair? When are you gonna fix it?" And then Nanaya says, Mom, like, I want you to touch my hair, feel my hair. And there's this touching scene where she literally forces the mom, takes the mom's hand and says like, I want you to feel my hair. And she feels her hair, and the mom sort of, you can see her sort of like breaking down, you know, internally, and saying, you know, your hair's beautiful. And there's so much history with hair, with nappy hairs, you would say, or you know, the way our hair naturally grows out. There's an older generation who has been so accustomed to you know, the presentable way that you should look with your hair, which is either relaxing your hair, putting a weave, putting a wig, or whatever the case may be, but basically making sure that your curls are defeated in a way, that they're texturized, and then that way you look presentable, you look professional, you look it's an acceptable look. But what we have done, I guess, the younger generation, and not just the younger generation, there's many other older women who paved the way, but I think this generation, what we've really been able to do is just take ownership of, you know, our hair and say, you know what, this is our hair. We're going to take time to learn how to care for our hair. We're going to take time to learn how to you know, come up with different styles of how our hair looks. And when you actually feel the hair, it feels soft, you know, it's beautiful hair. And it's just such it was such a powerful scene, especially for me. I just felt it was so powerful, because sometimes if you've got natural hair and you're pro natural hair, it can at times feel like you're almost in a fight, you know, trying to educate people and trying to, you know, make them see why you've made the choice that you've made. And I think it's especially interesting, the fact that in a lot of African countries, the natural hair movement hasn't caught on, as it were. So when you go to Africa, they will ask you, you know, have you thought about relaxing your hair? Or they'll charge you more, which is it's bizarre, really, if you think about it. Maybe bizarre is not the right word, but it's just so, you would think that Africa would be the place where natural hair is the norm, and would be the place where, you know, there's a wealth of knowledge about how to care for natural hair. And I appreciate that this is probably a gross generalization on my part. I'm not saying that the whole of Africa is ignorant on natural hair, but I'm just saying, just generally speaking. But it was really powerful to see them address that bit. So yeah, so the fashion and the beauty, that was on point. What I think they did well as well was really unpacking some of the barriers that people face when they do go home. And a big one is power cuts, energy. When you live in the West or other countries, you don't really think about energy. You don't really think about, you know, power cuts or the lights or having access to, you know, utilities, to Wi-Fi. But when you're in developing countries, and a lot of African countries, that is actually an issue. And in an African city, they refer to it as Dumsor. And I believe that that's sort of, you know, the term that is used in Ghana to talk about, you know, this energy. But if you're Ghanaian, please in the comments just explain it to me if I've got it wrong, or clarify if I have got it wrong. So it was interesting that they addressed that. So one, I like that they address the impact that it has on businesses and the frustration that entrepreneurs and businesses have, because Zainab, for example, she runs like a business that works with shea producers, producing shea butter, and she's one person who literally has been literally annoyed with the whole Dumsor thing, and a group of her along with other business people meet on a regular basis to talk about what they're going to do about this situation, which is a real issue. And it's not just unique to Ghana, it's unique to other places, to other African places. And it's like, you know what, these power cuts are ridiculous. These power cuts are such an inconvenience, that it's inconveniencing production, it's inconveniencing just everything across the board. So I like the fact that they address that. And secondary to that as well, Nanaya's father is the Minister of Energy, and they, as a group of friends, they talk about it. And I think Sade did ask, there's a scene where Sade asked Nanaya, you know, what her dad is doing, and Nanaya says, oh, I'll let him know. But you can tell that it's becoming an uncomfortable thing for Nanaya, because listen, her dad is the Minister of Energy, and you know, as a Minister of Energy, I'm sure there's a lot of bureaucracy that he has to deal with, but ultimately he's responsible. And we do see towards the end of the season that her dad actually loses his job. He loses his job as the Minister of Energy. And I loved that because it showed accountability. It showed an African state actually acting on the shortcomings of a minister, of you know, a minister with a certain portfolio. So I thought that was fantastic to see. And then it kind of links into Nanaya's dad losing that position meant that she kind of, I'd say her social status sort of went down a notch, because she used to get a lot of perks. She used to, you know, things like being seen quickly at the doctor's office or this or that. She used to get those perks just simply because her dad was the minister. And how many of us from developing countries can relate to that, where people literally are treated differently because their father or whoever, a member of their family, holds a certain position. They're treated different, not because they can actually bring anything different, but that just because they have the right last name and people feel like, you know, that you may be able to help them. Yes, so that was very, very interesting to see them unpack that all starting from the energy cut, from the, you know, the power cuts and the like, and we see them addressing the issue of generators, how expensive. And there's a scene with Zainab and her neighbor where there's sort of like a generator war, where Zainab can't sleep because the neighbor's generator is really loud, and those are real issues that people deal with. So I thought that it was fantastic that they dealt with that. Another thing that I thought was great is we see them address the treatment of domestic workers. So Makina, at the beginning, she is with Stefan, her partner, who's African American and happens to be working in Ghana. So Makina's aunt and uncle have domestic workers, and Stefan is uncomfortable that the domestic workers refer to Makina's aunt and uncle as master and mistress, I believe. So we see a scene where the guy is going to the uncle and says, oh, master. And Stefan is on this journey of self-discovery. He's African American, he's in Ghana, and he's really learning the history of Ghana, and I guess in a way trying to find himself in there, and he's particularly sensitive to that, and he addresses that with Makina, and ultimately addresses that with Makina's aunt and uncle. And I think the uncle pushes back, talking about how Ghana fought with the civil rights leaders, basically to show that, you know, this is a cultural thing. It's not the same as slavery or whatever the case is. But I thought it was really great that they addressed that, because it shows some of the sensibilities that Africans may not have, that other people may have. And I know I've had loads of discussions with people about the way domestic workers are treated. Not necessarily maybe the way they refer to their bosses or whatever in terms of master mistress, which I definitely I'm team Stefan on this one. I think that just gives slavery vibes, and that's not necessary at all. And also I think just the way that domestic workers are treated as second-class citizens, and as less than. I've seen situations where you go to people's houses and the domestic worker is not allowed to sit on the sofa. They have to sit on the floor, and you look at that and you think, this doesn't make sense. Like, how is any of this right? This is actually a remnant of slavery, although now people are able to hide behind the fact that, yeah, you know, there's an exchange of money, but unfortunately there isn't an exchange of professional respect. So I like the way that they actually touched on that. So that was great. And then we look at relationships, them navigating through those relationships. Nanaya with the Angolan guy, that was interesting, and I think she sort of tries to introduce something. You need to watch it for yourself. I'm not really going into depth with that, and it was interesting to see, you know, some of the sensibilities that, you know, some African men may have. So that was interesting, and we see Ngozi finally meets someone. So Ngozi is, you know, she's a church girl, and if you want to draw parallels with Sex and the City, which a lot of people have drawn parallels with an African city and Sex and the City, I guess she'll be the Charlotte of the group, sort of like the prude of the group. So she's met someone, and then Zainab as well. You know, she's navigating through relationships, so it's sort of interesting to see that. And Nanaya sort of has her lemonade experience, but I guess on the flip side, but again, you need to watch that to get what I mean. Another point that I wanted to touch on is I like how they addressed the ever hopeful entrepreneur. And when I talk about the ever hopeful entrepreneur is Sade meets this guy, I believe his name is Nase, and he, you know, he's not as wealthy as the other guys that Sade's been accustomed to date with, but the difference is with this guy, he is available, right? He's available, he's an entrepreneur, but I like how they showed that. So we see that clearly he's struggling, because we're initially introduced to him as when there's no energy, for example, no power, he comes over to Sade's place because she has a generator, you know, she's got Wi-Fi, so clearly he doesn't have those things, and they start as friends with utilities, which is an interesting one. But we see him, so they go out and his card gets declined, and he's got this story about there's a contract that he's waiting for it to go through with the government. It's a government contract, and he's literally been waiting for this for 2 years. And how many of you know, or you are that person where there's some kind of contract or deal or something that it's supposed to happen, and you're waiting. And it was interesting to see, and it wasn't to kind of down him, but it's just true to I think the politics of Africa more than anything. So that was interesting to see. Another part that I wanted to talk about in terms of business is Zainab has the shea butter business. I mentioned before about her frustrations with the power cuts. So at the end, we see that she has an interest from an investor from South Africa who offers a generous, amount to purchase the business. So my understanding of how Zainab's business works is she works with many different cooperatives that are run by women who actually produce the shea butter, and then she in turn sells the shea butter to other countries, and she exports the shea butter, and she has an agreement, and then she pays those women, right? So these people are interested in buying Zainab's business. It's an offer that makes sense. But what Zainab does is she goes and speaks to one of the women, and what that woman said was really powerful. She was like, okay, but Zainab explained that they're looking to buy the business. It will likely mean that you'll get less money. And the woman said, well, so this guy is going to make more money, but we're going to make less money. And she basically said to Zainab, if you don't fight for us, who else will? And I think that kind of got her thinking, and then she spent more time with the women again, and then ultimately at the end we do see her going back to the investors saying, listen, no, your offer was generous, but the women that I work with are not happy that they won't be getting the same amount, they won't be getting the same profits as they're accustomed to. And she says something that really struck with me. She says she believes in Ghana. She's like, she believes in Ghana, and if Ghanaians keep selling things on to America, to Britain, to the West, and even to South Africa, it means that their own people aren't really going to thrive. And I thought that makes sense, especially like with shea butter. If you haven't, I'll say just go online and just Google, go on YouTube especially, and just look about fair trade practice with stuff like that. So with African producers who work with companies to sell products to the West, they in most cases don't really get a good deal. Even if something is stamped fair trade, it doesn't mean that the producer has actually got what they should be getting. Apparently it's very easy to just get that fair trade stamp on any product. So I thought that was very, very interesting to watch. I'll say if you go on YouTube, I'll say type in Hey Fran Hey. She's a vlogger, well-being vlogger, and she has a video where they went to Africa. I know a lot of you are going to be like, went to Africa, like say the country. I think they went to Ghana and Togo, I'd like to think, and they actually saw the production, and it was a specific company, this guy who runs this particular cooperative and stuff like that. But I think he was really showing accountability and showing the work that he does, and it really exposes some of the fair trade mispractice, if you'd like to say. So I think she addressed it in the video, or maybe in a podcast, but I'd say if you go online and just search that, there's loads of information on that. Lastly, I wanted to touch on returning to the West. So at the beginning of the season, we see Adoma, who is Nanaya's cousin. She returns to Ghana, and she's literally like, yeah, you know, from what we can see, she's very much like, you know what, I'm here to experience the real Ghana. You know, I don't want none of this. I don't want these Western things. You know, they take her out for dinner and they have salmon. She's like, no, I don't want salmon. I want the real food. And she's really like, yeah, she's on 100 literally. So she's there. And at the end, we see her saying, you know what, she's returning back to the States because she's got a job offer that she couldn't decline. And literally they're all